This year, we have a unique opportunity to hear from one of our own for today's keynote presentation. June McAllister Fowler recently retired as the Senior Vice President of Communications, Marketing, and Public Affairs at BJC Healthcare, but she has definitely not figured out what it means to retire. She was promptly appointed chair of the Cortex Board and several other organizations that are near and dear to her heart. We thought it would be fitting to hear from June this afternoon, as she has looked at transit through so many different lenses in her career in both the private and the public sector. It has been an honor and a privilege to work with this woman over the last decade. She is the bomb, let me tell you. She is unflappable in any situation, and everything is always groovy in this woman's book. So let's have a round of applause for June. Thank you again.
I came up to make sure that the intro wasn't going to be longer than my speech. Good afternoon, everybody. So, the 90 Hampton, the 16 city limits, the 95 Kings Highway, the 97 Forsyth, and the Central West End Metro stop. I'll come back to those in just a moment, but first, it's so great to be in person for this luncheon and to be in a room of believers. A room of advocates, a room of people who know the importance of public transportation and transit. And if you didn't know it, listening to Senator Hoff and Senator Williams today, we certainly understand it. Listening to the great work done by our awardees, we certainly understand it. But I have to tell you, one of my favorite parts of going to these kinds of events takes place before we sit down. And today it took place out in that ante room, and the energy was great. And the energy was great because we're all connected by our common cause to advocate for public transportation and transit. Now, what's great when you're doing this kind of a talk is I don't have to convince you of the critical nature that public transportation plays in our region. Whether you're a member of the public, private, or nonprofit sectors, you get it. And because you get it, it's imperative that you help others to get it. In my past working lives, I worked in all three of the sectors. I retired from BJC in December of 2021. I told somebody today that I've had on heels like 4 days this week, and that shouldn't happen in retirement. Fortunately, I like wearing heels because I want people to think I'm tall. But I worked in all three sectors, and whether it was spending Monday nights, Councilwoman Dunaway, at planning commission meetings, listening to proposals by developers, or preparing for Wall Street analyst earnings calls, or working to ensure access to healthcare services for all, there was a connecting thread that was always present. And it was that someone was trying to convince someone else of the benefits of their position. Data, facts, strategy, highfalutin information was often shared. However, over time, I observed that the most persuasive arguments started not with the what, the when, the how, but with the why. It always started with the why. So this afternoon, I want to encourage this large room of advocates, this large room of believers, to think about your own personal why as to why you advocate for public transit and public transportation. As the believers, again, we all understand the value. 1,000 years ago, when I was in graduate school working on a degree in urban planning, I learned the myriad reasons that public transportation matters. And there have been numerous studies and articles published on world-class cities having world-class public transportation. The benefits range from the economic, the threefold increase in business sales for every dollar invested in transit. to the environmental, helping to reduce our individual carbon footprints when we leave our car behind, and everything in between. Those benefits are really important, and I dare say they're often a little harder for someone to wrap their heart around if they're a skeptic. That's why you have to identify and share your personal whys when advocating for public transportation and transit. Now, I always say, it's not about us, but when it comes to your why, it is about you. I bet there are a lot of our whys in this room are exactly the same. The why could be that you're an employer, a manager, a supervisor, a coworker, a colleague, and you or someone on your team depends on public transportation to get to work, or either just prefers public transportation to get to work. Or the why could be that you, your significant other, your adult child, your good friend, is on the front lines as a professional operating a bus or a transit line. Their jobs are crucially important, and you want to do everything you can to support them. And again, speaking of support, thank you to all of the transit operators and everyone who is a part of the public transportation system in this room today. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. You know, the why could also be that you're a student and you depend on the network of public transportation to get you from your off-campus apartment to campus for classes or connecting with your friends. The why could be that you love big events like city soccer, the Cardinals, and yes, we still love the Cardinals. This is a building year. You love Billikens basketball, Beyonce, Eric Clapton, and while you may have a car, you shun paying the premium parking prices and the long waits to get out of the parking lots at the end of your fun night. Or what I have learned is now the dynamic pricing that happens at the end of those events with Lyft and Uber. I love Lyft and Uber, but I have to tell you, I was shocked at the difference in pricing going to an event and coming from an event. The why could be any number of reasons that are personal to you and compelling to others. Identify what they are and wrap a story around them that you can share. My why started a long time ago with the 90 Hampton bus line. From 6th to 12th grade, it was my weekly after-school transportation from my home off de Bolivar to my family's cleaning business on West Florissant near Goodfellow. I loved making that ride. The 16 city limits took me to my friends' homes who lived in the Wells Goodfellow neighborhood, and then delivered us to what was then the thriving shopping area of Wellston. The 95 Kings Highway took a gaggle of us majorettes, cheerleaders, and fans, most of us didn't have cars, from our Saturday home football games at Soldan High School to the gathering spot for teenagers known as the Lot. How many people in here, if you know what the Lot is, raise your hand. Charles, what's the Lot? The White Castle Lot. Where was it? The White Castle Lot at Kings Highway and Natural Bridge was where all the PHL folks gathered after those Saturday games. And we had a ball. I was going to offer $10, but I said, what if a lot of people know? I don't have that much money. I'm retired on a fixed income. During college, the 97 Fourth Fight took me from Del Mar and de Bolivar to my downtown summer job at WIL Radio. And the Central West End Metro stop was entry to my BJC job for several years when we decided not to buy a third car for that third kid. So I gave her my car so that she could get where she needed to go, and I took Metro. In my volunteer life, again, think about your whys. I have found great value in channeling my why through my work with Citizens for Modern Transit. I use some of the experiences I shared with you today to share my support for public transportation and transit. I really do encourage each of you to identify your why and do the same. remembering that we are here today because CMT continues to grow, thrive, advocate, and most importantly, get results. It's clear that I have needed public transportation throughout my life. If you need a booster shot in developing your why, start with the reminder that CMT continues to provide to us about public transportation and transit. Regardless of the sector in which we work or the community in which we live, some of us ride it, all of us need it. Public transportation, someone said this early, really is about connecting people with jobs. You don't have a thriving region if you don't have jobs. And you don't have jobs if you don't have people that can get to them. That's why we have to support public transportation. As I reflected on my relationship with all those bus lines and Metro Transit, I actually recall the many operators, especially on the bus lines, who were so courteous each day that I got on the bus. Even the one who delivered us way too boisterous teenagers to the lot. If I have one regret about the days when I used public transportation much more frequently, it's that I didn't say thank you enough to those operators. So to those of you who are operators, I ask that you accept my thank you on behalf of those who were so instrumental in delivering me to where I needed to be. And to everyone else, whether you are in the not-for-profit, for-profit, or government sector, I urge you to develop your why when you are convincing your friends, your families, others who may think differently of why public transportation and public transit matters to you. They'll believe you more than they'll believe somebody that they don't know. Thank you all so much for listening.